Again, I'd like to ask you to please not speak and not carry on conversations in this room. If you'd like to talk to your neighbor, ask your neighbor to go outside with you. My name is Lisa, and I'm an addict. And I'm going to try not to cry while I'm introducing this man. I don't know much about how to do this. So during this past year, I've been very honored to be the student. And this man has taught me how to work in the position that I'm in on the convention committee. He has taught me how to be open-minded and how to be a part of. And this is without even meeting him in person. This man lives in California, and he is one of the most kind and ornery people that I believe I've met in this program. I'm very honored to say that I can call him a friend. And when my husband and I went to pick him up at the airport, he just walked right up and made himself a part of my family. He is a very gentle spirit, and yet he's, like I said, he's a very ornery spirit also. I'd like to introduce Bob.
I'm Bob. I'm an addict. Take care of a little housekeeping here. I am almost always the only one in the room who stutters. You can always tell my car back home. It's the one with the license plate bbbBob on it. That sits right above the bumper sticker my children got me that says, "Stutterers do it repeatedly." We aren't going there tonight. Well, maybe a little bit. My first sponsor told me it's all about me, not about you. Anything I say here tonight is all about me. It's what's kept me clean for as long as I've been here. It's not designed to keep anybody else clean, but it keeps me clean. And that's what I'm going to tell you about. So you got to always remember that it's all about me, not about you. Another thing I had to tell you is I have, very bad short-term memory lapse, and I have to write everything down, and I do. So if it bothers you that I've got notes here, all I can tell you is that's one of the many reasons why God created sponsors. But one of the first things I heard here, when I found the Rooms of Narcotics Anonymous was that it's progress, not perfection. That made sense to me. As long as I'm taking 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards, instead of 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. And when I got here, I didn't have a personal computer. I didn't have a lot. And I had to write everything down on the back of envelopes and little scraps of paper, and it looked something like this. Today it looks a little better. See, but I say this because this is progress. This is progress. As long as I'm moving ahead, as long as my recovery pushes me to push myself ahead, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. The other thing I'll tell you is that I'm prone to using colorful language. If colorful language bothers you, you are in the wrong place tonight. Although I got to tell you, my wife is constantly harping on me, when we get clean, we're supposed to change everything, including our language. And I have to keep telling her I never used colorful language until I got clean. This is a change for me. Which is, of course, one of the many reasons why God created her sponsor. My wife and I have one of these very good program marriages, in part because of some really incredibly wonderful advice my original sponsor gave me before I got married. He said, never argue with a woman trained by the Israeli army in hand-to-hand combat. She was, I don't. I want to thank the committee, Lisa, for asking me here. It's always an honor and a privilege to do service by speaking at a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. I also want to thank all of you because you've made me feel incredibly welcome here. That doesn't always happen to us as we do these conventions, and you have put a whole new meaning for me on the term Southern hospitality. Thank you. I can tell you my whole story in about 8 lines. Right about the time I was 14, I started drinking alcohol alcoholically. When I did that, I didn't stutter. Right about the same time I started using drugs addictively. When I did that, I didn't care if I stuttered. And the whole next 26 years was all about not caring. And what happened when I got here was what kept me in that critical first 90 days was that I saw people who cared. They cared about themselves, they cared about each other, they cared about people they didn't know, and I liked that, and I wanted that. And over time, I've gotten better at that, and that's progress, and I'll take that. If you need to know, my drugs of choice were more yours, and most especially more of yours. If the concept of using drugs addictively is something you can't relate to, there's nothing I can tell you. If the concept of using drugs addictively is something you can relate to, then you know exactly who I am, where I've been, what happened, how I got here, and maybe why I stay here. I've been criticized for not telling you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I'll do that. It was fucked. Addiction beat me. And today it's a whole lot better. I do indeed. If you're new, for those people who are new, Narcotics Anonymous is a program of complete abstinence from all drugs except sugar, nicotine, and caffeine. Just try drinking NA coffee. Freeze it, chop it, and snort it. Coming down here, I was thinking about this. My NA birthday is in July. In fact, Steve T has one more date than I do. And I have this sort of weird anniversary because I haven't had a drink since Thanksgiving Day in 1980. Because that's the day I discovered the cure for alcoholism. You don't need to go to any other programs. There's a cure for alcoholism, and I discovered it. Heroin addiction. I thought I was onto something. I really did. It took me 60 years to figure the gaps in my logic, and when I did, I ended up here. 15, almost 16 years clean. I still go to a great many meetings. People go to meetings for a variety of different reasons. I go because I am convinced that somewhere out there is that one meeting where mushrooms don't count. And when I find it, I finally got a home group. You know, when I got here, I had very good consumer skills. I would read the backs of packages and look at the ingredients, you know. So I brought that here. And my first 90 days, you use those skills. I think I went to every program that ended in an A. If it ended in an A, I tried it. It was the programs that ended in a non that I wasn't very happy with. Anybody know how many Al-Anons and Nar-Anons it takes to change a light bulb? None. Let the fucking thing change itself. Of course, the other side of that is, how many recovering addicts does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is none. If it's burned out, it's obviously God's will. I've also got to tell you, I don't mind people who introduce themselves as addict alcoholics, just as long as they're willing to put $2 in the basket. You know, I got kids, and kids have no patience. They're always on me. What's the bottom line? Cut through everything, Dad. What's the bottom line? And I started thinking about, what's my bottom line here? What's the bottom line in recovery? And what I came to is that my bottom line is that my life today is better than the life I had before. No matter what. No matter what kind of shit happens, and some nasty, ugly shit has happened to me, my life today is better than the life I had before. And I don't subscribe to this belief that my worst day clean is better than my best day using, because, you know, I didn't use for 26 years because I didn't like it. I did like it. I'm one of those people, the last day I used, it worked. It was my life that didn't work. It was my life that was in a shambles. And the truth is that seeing what I've seen and being where I've been, the bottom line is I wouldn't trade my worst day clean for my best day using. Because nothing I have seen and walked through so far has been so bad that I've lost focus on what my best day has been here. You know, if you think about what your best day is, pick out one day. What's your one best day here? Never trade that day for anything. If you hang on to nothing else, hang on to that day. Because that day can relive itself over and over and over. The shit passes. As long as we don't get in our own way, we're going to be just fine. You know, back where I come from, we're having the great relapse panic of 2002. Some high-profile people have gone out, and there's this great wringing of hands. Why did they go out? Everyone, why did they go out? Every meeting you go to, the topic is relapse and relapse, and why did they go out? Why did they go out? And it really struck me, you know, it was really very frustrating for me, because I know why those people went out. They went out because they used. Using is a conscious choice. No one ever accidentally relapsed. No one ever accidentally fell on a loaded rig. It doesn't happen that way. No one ever accidentally mistook Tylenol and Demerol and got them mixed up. It doesn't happen that way. No one ever accidentally rolled up $100 bill and snorted powder. Doesn't happen that way. Relapse is a direct result of the absence of continuing positive change. It's all about what the basic text talks about in becoming complacent. If you're complacent, if your recovery stagnates, you are suddenly in the absence of continuing positive change. Relapse is a choice, and when one of these people came back, people were jumping over chairs to get to them. They were saying, "Why'd you go out? Why'd you go out?" It was the wrong fucking question. The question is, why, when you decided to get clean again, did you come back here? What was it what hope was it that Narcotics Anonymous held for you? What had you seen here? What had you heard here? What had you done here that your hope to recover lay in Narcotics Anonymous? Because on my worst day, I better damn well know what they saw, because that might be all I've got to hang on to. You know, Step 2 talks about sanity. You go to meetings and the topic is Step 2, and everyone wants to talk about insanity is doing this. You know what? The word in the step is sanity. The dictionary defines sanity as soundness of judgment. We're restored to a place where we can make better choices. Given the opportunity and the strength of what we learn here from Narcotics Anonymous, we have the option to make that choice. The text says God gives us the ability to do only two things: breathe and choose. And what we begin to exercise here are informed and refined choices. Relapse is a choice. And while we're talking about Step 2, the word is could, not would. I just love it when these people say, "Oh, I prayed for this and I prayed for that and God didn't answer my prayers." What don't you understand? God said no. God's allowed to say no. Gee. You know, I never believed in the concept of the burning bush until I actually had one. And it took me a while to actually realize that what happened. I had about maybe 5 years clean, and I was at this meeting, and I had to leave the meeting at a certain time. And the time I had to leave was also the time that the speaker ended. So I'm walking down this long hall of this church to get to the bbbBob car, and this young kid comes running up to me with that great 45-year newcomer enthusiasm, and he says, "Don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle." It just struck me the wrong way. I just wanted to say the worst fucking thing I could think of. And I had one of those experiences where I heard it the same time he did, because I had no idea I was going to say it. What came out was, my miracle happened. It's my job today to sustain it. My miracle happened when I knew I didn't want to go back out. My miracle happened the moment I realized surrender. My miracle happened the moment I attained desire. See, I've been to some meetings here, and yes, you do some very different things here. But what we do is we read this incredibly stupid thing, and they say, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using. You're a member when you say you are. And everybody says, I are. Know what? You are not a member when you say you are. The third tradition is very clear. The requirement for membership is the desire to stop using. Early on, I had a sponsor come to me and say, what's that word desire mean? And I said, oh, desire. It means... I didn't have a fucking clue what it meant. So we did what I always do. We went to the dictionary. And I can't tell you how many spiritual awakenings I've had right out of the Oxford English Dictionary. They define desire as a wish for the possession and enjoyment of something with earnestness. And they define earnestness as with deep conviction. The desire to stop using is the deep conviction to stop using. The desire to stop using is that moment when you know you are willing to go to any length, to do anything, to listen to anyone, just to not use again. The moment you are willing to walk any path just to make your life better, just to distance yourself from the ugliness and the stupidity of the lives we all lived when we were out there. That is the requirement for membership. And if you're new, what I got to tell you is everything's a process. Desire's a process. As long as you are at the beginning of that process, you're a member. As long as you have one glimmer of hope inside you, no matter how young or how old, that you want to stop using, and Narcotics Anonymous may actually be able to have something that you can hold on to, you are a member. If you're just here to get your court card signed, if you're here to talk in the back, if you're here to find a job, if you're here to find a couch, everyone's welcome. Visitors are always welcome, but you're not a member. See, N.A. is the land where dreams come true. When Judy Garland was singing about somewhere over the rainbow, she's talking about here. This is where we learn to dare to dream. If you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, it dropped. You're here. And this amazing thing happens. We dream these dreams, and our dreams come true. And we're inspired to dream even bigger dreams, and they come true. And as the process unfolds, we start dreaming dreams we never thought we were allowed to dream, and they come true. And we finally reach that point where we dream dreams we never knew existed, and they come true. Just because we're here. See, I've got a mantra. My mantra is, I'm a good and decent human being entitled to only the finest that life has to offer me. Second best and third best is not good enough anymore. I'm a good and decent human being entitled to only the finest that life has to offer me. Second best and third best is not good enough anymore. Entitled. Not deserve. The dictionary says deserve means to be worthy of something. Well, I'm probably worthy of winning the lottery. Probably worthy of having dancing girls back in the room when I get there. Ain't going to happen, but I'm probably worthy of it. Entitled means to have a claim to something. I am owed only the finest that life has to offer me. Everyone in this room with 24 hours clean is owed the finest that life has to offer us just because we're clean. See, being okay isn't good enough anymore. It's time to reap the benefits instead of suffering the consequences. See, earlier this year I was at a convention, and unnamed convention in the Arizona desert, and I had a heckler. You know, a heckler is one of those people who thinks the program committee should have picked them to be up here and not me. And occasionally we get them. Yeah, I said, somewhere along the line, I said, well, after all, what are we doing here? And this guy said, we're here to stay clean. I thought, you know what? That's not why I'm here. Being clean is not a length of time issue. Being clean is a quality of life issue. People go out with time. People whose quality of life is ever expanding rarely go out. If you're just putting in your time, you're missing it. Recovery is about the quality of life and doing it at an ever deeper level. See, I'm jealous of the people who say the steps answer all my questions, because the steps have never answered any of mine. See, if I believe, and I do, that I'm made in God's image, what that tells me is that somewhere inside me lives that little spark, that little microchip of His divinity. And that's where all my answers lie. In all those years, I was out there looking for stuff from the outside to fix me. I was doomed because I didn't know what the questions were. And what the steps have done, and what being sponsored through the traditions have done, is it's given me the questions to unlock the answers that were there all the time. Recovery is not a series of answers. Recovery is a series of new questions. As long as I have new questions, as long as I'm challenged to think on a level where I'm coming up with new questions, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. See, God gave us this incredible instrument. It's called a brain. I don't know, you know, we hear this expression, we have a committee in our heads. I got a political convention going on. And it's yelling at me all the time. See? But God gives us this brain, and He doesn't expect us to misuse it, abuse it, underuse it, or apologize for having it. It's there for us to be challenged to explore new limits, to explore areas we never knew existed. See, and maybe 5 years ago, I was doing this Thanksgiving meeting back where I live, and in the course of what I did, I usually managed to piss off everybody individually over something, and it'll happen. And afterwards, this guy I know came up to me and he said, "Well, I got to tell you, I don't agree with yada da 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 da." And I said to him, "Why?" And have you ever been talking to somebody and all of a sudden their eyes kind of glaze over? And you know you're talking to someone right out of Night of the Living and Dead? I said, "Why?" And his eyes kind of glazed over. And he thought for a minute and he said, "Because my sponsor told me so." Because my sponsor told me so is not an acceptable answer in recovery. We are not spiritual clones of our sponsors. Our sponsor's job is not to tell us how to think, it's to challenge us to think, to find something that fits us. And the problem is we often have the blind leading the blind here. As my wife describes it, we create a dynasty of assholes. What I've heard or been told isn't enough. What's enough is what I'm taught at the very beginning. It's about what I come to believe. I came to believe something. I came to believe an internal process. My sponsor didn't tell me what to believe. My sponsor challenged me to come to believe something I believed for myself. NA is not a robot factory. I don't know about you, I didn't get clean to stay stupid. And I don't have to accept what is unacceptable. I don't have to tolerate what is intolerable. And I got to tell you, in recovery, ignorance is intolerable and it's not acceptable. See, hello? Is it for me? The dancing girls. See, back in my area in California, there are a group of individuals, mostly men, who I respect immensely. And they're all in recovery, and they wear this button. It says, "Recovering Bigot." Recovering bigot. Because we come in here from different places with different beliefs, from different backgrounds, and we're taught different things. And when we come here, we recover from our bigotries as well. The problem is that we still have bigots in recovery, and that is not okay. Probably isn't happening here from what I can see. But, no, wait. I didn't mean it that way. What's happening in this entire country is that since what happened on September 11th happened, there is this distrust for certain ethnic groups. And there are brother and sister addicts of the Muslim faith and of Arab American descent who are being shunned and discriminated against in this fellowship, and it is not okay. We have to change that. Every speaker who speaks has to lay that out, I think, because it's not being spoken about, and it's happening. At first it's them, and then it's me, and then it's you, and then it's her. See, I'm Jewish. Swastika tattoos offend me. I understand that you come in here with them. I don't understand why, after everything else changes, that doesn't change too. We change everything. For Christ's sake, stop talking about people as being NA Nazis. The Nazis were thoroughly despicable people. They still are. Call them purists. Call them traditionalists. Please stop calling them Nazis. Because if you accept stuff like that, if you overlook stuff like that, if you are made aware of stuff like that and continue to overlook it, we seal our own fate as a fellowship and as human beings clean on this planet. Okay, look, this is where you begin to walk out. Let me remind you, it's all about me, it's not about you. I've been told by certain conventions rather pointedly that I'm not being invited there because I was too controversial. I think what that means in English is that I don't tell people what they want to hear, and I honestly tell you what I believe. And if that tweaks your sacred cows, so be it. These are my truths. And what I'm going to share with you are my truths. They would have challenged me to stay clean. I think we have some old wives' tales here. If you don't know, an old wives' tale is defined as something generally accepted as true that on further inspection is found to be nonsense. First, I can just watch them walk out. We say this thing by rote. We say it because we've heard it, and we believe it because we heard it, and most people have never thought about it. I want to tell you, I am not powerless over people, places, or things, and I can tell you why. I am not powerless over my addiction today, and I can tell you why. First of all, you need to define your terms. The dictionary says that powerlessness is the inability to produce the desired effect. I accept that. That works for me. I did not use today. That was the desired effect. I was not powerless over my addiction. I am powerless in active addiction. I am not powerless in recovery because I choose to not make the conscious choice to not use. Plus, I'm not powerless over people, places, or things. First of all, you have to understand that when you read the step, there's this word that everybody overlooks. probably the single most important word in the step. It's the word were. We were powerless. That's the past tense. Now we are powerless. I am not powerless over people because I have learned that the worst thing I can do is to become a part of your soap opera. What I got to do is own what's mine. Be conscious of, very conscious of what's my part, what's my place, what am I supposed to do, and whatever's left over is somebody else's to worry about. As long as I don't become a character in your melodrama, as long as I own what's mine, that's the desired effect. I wasn't powerless over people. And I'm certainly not powerless over places because I choose to be here tonight, not East 14th Street in Oakland, California, copping dope. As long as I don't put myself consciously where I know I shouldn't be, I am not powerless over places. And I'm not powerless over things either, although this one's a little more difficult, because this might be the one thing in the program that we can't fake until we make. See, we have these magic words here. The sponsors union doesn't like me telling you this. But we have some magic words here. And the magic words give us supreme power over things. See, everybody, blanket statement, everybody who walks into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous for the first time has the same two favorite words. Fuck it. We say, fuck it coming in, and some of us say, fuck it going out. But it's possible to replace those words with the magic words. The magic words are, oh well. But like everything else, oh well carries responsibility. Oh well is the serenity to know the things I cannot change. Oh well is the perfect moment of surrender. Oh well is not just, oh well. Oh well understands what my capabilities are, what the situation is, what I can do and not do in the situation, and we say the serenity prayer. Does nobody listen to it? The serenity to know the things I cannot change. Oh well. And the power to carry it out. I don't believe this is a life and death program. Narcotics Anonymous is 110% about life. I didn't come here to escape death. I came here to learn how to live life. See? The fact is that I know people who died of the disease. You know people who died of the disease. We all know people who died of the disease. And the death certificate may not say the disease, but it's the disease. But statistically, very few people die. I'm not lucky enough to go back out and die. I'm just going to be fucking miserable. And your misery. What do people tell us when they come back? That it was miserable. That's because they didn't die either. See, I always thought that it wasn't jails, institutions, and death. It was jails, institutions, and misery, because after reading the basic text 1,000 times, the 1,001st time I actually read what was there. If you turn to page 8, the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous, 5th edition, the beginning of the first full paragraph says, the only alternatives to recovery are jails, institutions, dereliction, and death. I have no idea why we didn't transfer that to the reading, because it makes sense. Webster's defines dereliction as a state of neglect or misery. I'm doomed to be miserable if I don't stay here and learn how to live life. This is a life program. I am the wrong person to ask to pray for some asshole I don't like. And yes, as the workshop said here, and I believe it, our resentment is when I take poison and expect you're going to die. And I got to tell you, I got one resentment I enjoy so much, I'm never giving it up. But you see, prayer, for me, is a very sacred, very special, very personal interaction with my God as I understand Him. And I'll be damned if I'm going to fuck that up with some jerk I don't like. Living in the solution is asking for the power to turn it over, let it go, and move on. The asshole's got to pray for him or herself. We read this thing. We read it today. We didn't become addicted in one day. I did. That's the nature of it. It's the taste on Wednesday and the bag on Thursday, and you're dealing it by Friday. I became addicted in one day. Didn't matter what it was. Dope, chocolate, sex, I didn't care. I did become addicted in one day. Somehow we've been taught that principles before personalities means that we've got to love everybody. I don't love everybody, and I like even less. Love is a very special emotion. The dictionary says that love is a profound attachment, and they define profound as from the depths of one's being. I don't give that out helter-skelter. I'm very careful about how I give that out. But if principles before personalities, like everything else, is all about me, then what that tells me is that I can't let my personality get in the way of my working the principles of the program so I can stay clean. Doesn't mean anything about you. It's all about me. Doesn't mean I gotta love you. Doesn't mean I gotta like you. I just love everybody. Get a brain. Although, I gotta tell you, I'm kind of sorry that Mr. Bill isn't here, because he closed the circle for me. Because I knew there was something else, and I didn't know what. And what he said was to me, in a very off-handed way, he said, all you gotta love is their recovery. And that made sense to me. That's what brings us all here. What I love profoundly is your recovery. What I will go to the ends of my ability to do is help you save your recovery. Narcotics Anonymous is about recovery. And I was, God, I must have had 9 months. And I was at this Steps and Traditions meeting, and they were on the 12th tradition, I think. And I was sitting next to this woman who'd gotten clean when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. And I said to her in my very best 9-month know-it-all, well, if I don't take someone's inventory, how do I know if they've got something I want? And she said to me, no, my dear, we never take inventories, but we are allowed to make loving appraisals. I knew exactly what the difference was. Taking your inventory is all about you. Making an appraisal lovingly is all about me. I loved it. I'm never going to another step study meeting again. I am tired of people being there as a substitute for sponsorship. I am tired of being there, period. I could care less how you work step 6. I am not interested in how you work step 8. What I will go to, though, if anybody ever comes up with one, is a step living meeting. At some point we stop working the steps and we start living them. Practicing these principles in our daily lives. Give me a step working meeting. No interest. Give me a step living meeting. I want to know how you live step 6. I want to know how you live step 8. See, I don't care what time you got up today, unless you got more than 5,709 days, you don't have more time than I do. Except time is only important for one reason, and it's all about the tapes. You know, we have these tapes in our head, and these tapes are always running. And the one thing that time does is, time gives us a data bank of clean experiences. Time gives us a data bank of things that we've seen and watched other people walk through, and we've walked through. Time gives us the experience of living life in recovery. And what happens is, if you expect the old tapes to go, they don't. What happens is, the more new tapes you have, the faster the old tapes run, and the quicker the new tapes kick in. That's what's important about time. The problem with time is that people with any kind of significant time who relapse almost never come back. Newcomers come back. Rarely does anybody with any kind of significant time come back. I'm never making another gratitude list in my life. Anyone can make a laundry list. I know 10,000 adjectives just like everybody else does. See, in Narcotics Anonymous, gratitude is an action verb. My gratitude speaks when I share in care the NA way. My gratitude is something I have to show, not just list. Forget the gratitude list. Show me your actions. What kind of service are you doing? Who are you helping? You know, this program and every other program like it emanated out of one concept. And the concept was, faith without works is dead. And our works are the demonstration of our gratitude. If you want to inventory something, inventory the only thing you're promised. The steps promise us only one thing, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. You want to inventory something, inventory your spiritual awakenings. Inventory what's changed. Inventory what you've done that's made a difference for somebody else, that's in turn made a difference for you. I like to stay far away from people who speak in bumper sticker. You know, the people who try the hardest to tell you how spiritual they are, the least spiritual people in the room. But there are some of the little sayings that I like. One is, pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. Pain's going to happen, suffering's a choice. We'll get back to that. The other one I like is, if you're over 18, there are no victims. There are only volunteers. And I used to volunteer all the time. Pick me. Of course, the corollary to that is, if you don't want to get shit on, don't sit under an asshole. Do something. Move. No one's bringing you a fucking umbrella. I love watching football on TV. Makes my wife completely nuts, and I don't care. I love watching football on TV. And a couple of years ago, I was watching this particularly brutal game in a blinding rainstorm. And after the game, they put a reporter and a camera person down there on the field, and you have this picture now of this 380-pound, 6'6" lineman coming at you with a 30-inch neck, and he's covered with mud and blood and all kind of things, and he looks like he's in a daze. And it was at this moment that the reporter thought it would be a good time to stick a microphone in this guy's face and say, "How do you feel?" And what came out of this guy's mouth was, "Pain is the gateway to wisdom." I loved it. It made a whole lot of things make sense for me. Because what I think is, you know, pain is mandatory, suffering is optional, and we can choose to make that leap, is that everything I needed to know, everything I needed to hear to know about not suffering, I heard in my first 90 days. And when I started talking with my sponsor about pain as a gateway to wisdom, we began talking about this concept, and he said, "Well, make a list." And like all good lists, there had to be 12. So I did that, and very quickly I'm going to share with you the 12 things that I needed to hear and heard in my first 90 days to never have to choose to suffer. Okay. One is, don't use no matter what. Don't use no matter what. If I don't use, I'm not going to make a bad situation worse. If I use, what's going to happen, not only am I going to make a bad situation worse, but I don't know how much new bad situations I'm going to make along the way. Don't use no matter what. If you don't use, you can't suffer. 2 is, get, use, call, or in this day and age, email your sponsor. That's what your sponsor is there for. You know, I just love it. When you hear people say, "Well, I just didn't want to bother my sponsor." It's part of the job description. No one sponsors you if they don't expect you to bother them. I mean, after all, everybody knows what the definition of a sponsor is. Sponsor is someone who agrees to put up with your petty bullshit and pretend that it's interesting. That's because they've got a sponsor who puts up with their petty bullshit and pretends that it's interesting. If you use your sponsor, you can't suffer. Number 3 is live a step, if you are actively involved in the process of living in a step, you absolutely cannot suffer. 4, and probably the most important one, is go to a meeting. Meetings are where the business of Narcotics Anonymous recovery takes place, because meetings aren't real. Meetings are an artificially safe environment for us to do whatever we have to do, say whatever we have to say, be whomever we have to be, to learn whatever we have to learn. Real is out there. It is no coincidence that the last phrase of the last line of the last step is, practice these principles in all our affairs out there. And we learn those principles not only from being sponsored, we learn them in meetings. If you take yourself to a meeting, there are people there who will not let you suffer, and they will teach you how to not choose to suffer. Number 5 is pray. I can't tell you how to do that. We all do it differently, and by God, somehow it works. Number 6 is read the basic text and the literature. We have some incredible literature here. We have some of the finest, most readable information pamphlets available to anyone, anywhere. We have a step working guide that people from other programs come to our meetings to just to buy the step working guide. And it's a text, not a book. It's a text, like a textbook. I don't know about you, when I was in high school and on that first day I was given a textbook, I didn't go right home and curl up and read my algebra book front to back. I studied it. It was a text. If I didn't understand what was on the first page, I didn't go to the second page. If I didn't understand what was on the second page, I didn't go to the third page, because it's the basic text. And if we study the text and learn from the text, because it is a text, we have no choice but to have our lives get better in spite of us. You know, there's an old saying, if your basic text is falling apart, your life probably isn't. Number 7 is do service. So I have to tell you that committee-based service makes me fucking nuts. But it goes back to faith without works is dead. There are many ways of doing service. Your presence in this room is service. Sponsoring people is service. Helping set up and take down a meeting is service. Saying hello to a newcomer is service. Doing what you can is service. Number 8 is use your telephone numbers, although I got to tell you, you probably do it here, and we do it back where I'm from. They do this incredibly dumb thing. They pass around meeting schedule. And everyone's supposed to put their name and telephone number on it. And then at the end of the meeting, they give it to the newcomers. Wasted effort. They never call. If you're waiting for a newcomer to call you, you're waiting for the notice of that newcomer's funeral. They never call. I don't know when I got clean, and probably when Dickie got clean, and when Steve T got clean, they didn't do it that way. The old-timers came, they got our numbers. They called us. They made sure I had a ride to a meeting. They made sure I knew when the next NA event was. They took me out to coffee after the meetings whether I wanted to go or not. They made sure that we were involved. They gave us little service jobs. See, you can't expect people who don't know what we're doing here to call you We have to change that. We have to go back to the old way. We have to start getting the numbers of newcomers and calling them. We have to make sure amongst all of us actively that they have rides to meetings. That's our responsibility here. See, how many of us are going to actually stand there and build the bridge? How many of you are willing to build the bridge? See, we have to remember that when we were new, there were people here who were guardians of the program. And they had meetings for us. And they had stuff for us. And they had wisdom for us. And we too are guardians of the program. We need to keep building the bridge. This is a great, wonderful convention theme. Because the challenge is how many of us are willing to help build the bridge. Number 9 is be with someone clean. You never have to go anywhere alone. This amazing thing happens. Someone will always go with you if you have to go somewhere squirrely. The only option to asking someone to go with you is to just not fucking go. There are no squirrely situations unless we choose to put ourselves in them. Number 10 is keep it simple, and my 2 favorites are thank you and laugh. See, there is no such thing as unreasonable happiness. If you're not laughing, you missed it. If you don't find a sense of humor, you missed it. And yeah, you know what? Lousy things happen. I know that. Been there, done that. But if you don't find a sense of humor, you missed it. Early on, I was sponsoring a guy, and I was convinced this guy was going out. And I went to my sponsor and said, what do I look for? How do I know? And without missing a beat, he came back with, nobody laughs on the way out. Think about it. Nobody laughs on the way out. It's the great self-test. Am I laughing? Can I find humor where it's appropriate? Laughter is mind and mood altering, and it's okay. Everybody wants to go to heaven. No one wants to die. It took a while. I had to bounce off the wall. See, and the other one is we need to learn to dare to say thank you. I am not programmed to say thank you. I was working my 8th and 9th step for I don't know how many times. This is about 2 years ago. And it struck me that I had never thanked anybody who had helped me. And I picked up the telephone to thank them, and I had no idea what to say. It was one of the single hardest things I have ever done. I am not programmed to say thank you. And if I sponsor you, an amend is never I'm sorry. Because I'm sorry is too easy. I'm sorry just rolls off my tongue. I smoked all the dope. I'm sorry. Been there? Gee, dear, I took all the money out of our bank account. I'm sorry. Grandma, there's not a stick of furniture left in the house. I'm so sorry. I can do I'm sorry. You see, 8 and 9 are not about I'm sorry, because recovery doesn't change what I do. Just as when I work step 4, my inventory is not about what I've done. What recovery does, it changes who I am. If I change who I am, what I've done takes care of itself. When I inventory myself in steps 4 and step 10, it's about who was I when I did whatever I did. If I change who I am, what I do takes care of itself. The amend is never, I'm sorry. The amend is, I am responsible for doing what I did. Today, I am a person incapable of doing what that old person did. That's the amend. I am a person today constitutionally incapable of doing what that old person did. Because I make the amend for me. I make the amend to validate my progress. I don't make the amend for you, hoping that you will forgive me. See, so I had this experience where I had such a hard time saying thank you, and I went to some of the people I sponsor, and I told them what was happening, and they said, you wimp, you know, and I said, okay, you do it. And it was one of the hardest things they'd ever done, because they weren't programmed to say thank you either. And you know, you can't change the program, but you can complement it. Because what we did was, we sat down and we wrote what we called a positive 8th step and a positive 9th. And positive 8 is made a list of all people who had helped us in recovery, who listed exactly what they'd done, and became willing to thank them all. And positive 9 is, whenever humanly possible, individually thank each person without exception. And I want you to do, if you think this is so easy, I want you to give this a try. I want you to go home and make a list and thank people. And see just how easy or hard it is. My sponsor used to have me do this thing. Each year at my recovery birthday, he would have me look back and find one thing, one instance, one circumstance, one happening that best validated why I stayed clean that year. What one thing best spoke to why I stayed clean that year. And I did that for 9 years. And I couldn't do it again. I've never done it again, because out of the single worst experience of my life came the single greatest validation why I stay clean. March 1st, today being March 9th, March 1st, 1995, my oldest son, 17, was murdered. And he was murdered by two kids, and they were kids, who he would have told you were his two best friends. My son's murder never jeopardized my recovery, but it did challenge it. And there's something about a violent death. Those of us who share the experience of losing a child have a commonality. But each of us has a different experience. Losing a child to murder is a unique and devastating, sudden, unexpected experience. It's ugly, and it doesn't go away because the legal process keeps you with it for a long time. And I went through all those things. I went through sadness and rage and disappointment and
shock and everything I went through. And what happened was I took them to meetings of Narcotics Anonymous. I was harbored and given safe passage from meeting to meeting. I was allowed to be whomever I had to be, to say whatever I had to say in the loving arms of Narcotics Anonymous. People who I knew couldn't stand me were calling me and offering me rides to meetings, and I couldn't stand them, and I was letting them take me. Because the bottom line is, our differences become petty when the big stuff happens, and the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. And my sponsor gave me permission to physically attack the next idiot who wanted to tell me that my son's murder was God's will. And they did. My son's murder was not God's will. My son's murder was a manifestation of just how easily God's will can be thwarted by the intervention of a human agency. No one can fuck it up like we can. Vigilance is making sure that God's will is done and that we don't ruin it. And what happened was he was murdered on a Wednesday, and that previous weekend he had been at my house with me and his two younger brothers, and we had this incredible weekend. We laughed and we argued and we played and we did this and we did that. And Saturday night, Sunday morning after Saturday Night Live ended, and the younger two kids went to bed, the older one and I stayed up and talked. We talked for a very long time. Do you have any idea the gift from a kind and merciful God? I was allowed to do a 9-step with this kid. If I was still using, he wouldn't have been there. And even if he was there, by midnight I'd have been passed out anyway. God gave me the gift of leaving nothing unsaid. And I want to tell you, when I heard he'd been murdered, I sat down to do this thing that I told everybody does. I sat down to write him a letter to tell him everything I had never told him, and I have never before or never since had this experience. I had the experience of a wave of peace come over me. Because I had said everything. Let me tell you, if you have things unsaid, I don't care what they are. I don't care who they're with. I don't care what the circumstances are. You damn well better go and say them. Because not saying them, and I've seen it happen too many times, will eat you up alive. Never leave anything unsaid. And what happened was Sunday when he went to go home, he did this thing that he was never embarrassed to do. He went to each of us and he hugged us because he had seen us do that here. And he went to each of us and he told us that he loved us because he had heard us do that here. And he got in his car and he drove away, and I never saw him again. I never talked to him again. Do you have any idea the magic? The last words my son ever said to me were, "Dad, I love you. Dad, I love you. Will live with me till the day I go to join him. Dad, I love you is validating my progress here. Dad, I love you validates my dreams here. Dad, I love you validates all the hardship here. Dad, I love you validates the whole experience of recovery. Dad, I love you is a gift. It's a gift only of the program of Narcotics Anonymous. Only of the program of Narcotics Anonymous. And sometimes the best I can do is just say thank you and move on. And I will say thank you, and I will move on.